June 18, 1815, a muddy field in Belgium. Two titans of Europe, Napoleon Bonaparte and Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington, prepare for a confrontation that would decide the fate of a continent. This wasn't just another battle, it was the ultimate showdown, the culmination of decades of war and ambition. For 20 years, Napoleon had reshaped Europe with his military genius, building an empire that stretched from Spain to Russia. But after the disastrous Russian campaign and defeat at Leipzig, he was exiled to Elba. Yet the emperor was not one to be contained. Less than a year later, in March 1815, Napoleon escaped Elba, landing in France to a rapturous welcome. His march to Paris, often called the Flight of the Eagle, saw royalist troops defecting to his side, leading to King Louis XIII fleeing the capital. The 100 Days had begun. Europe, still reeling from the Napoleonic Wars, reacted with alarm. The major powers, Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia, swiftly formed the Seventh Coalition, determined to finally end Napoleon's threat. Their combined forces were immense, but Napoleon knew he had to strike first. His strategy was daring: split the Allied armies before they could unite. He would march into Belgium, hoping to defeat the British under Wellington and the Prussians under Blücher separately, preventing their combined strength from overwhelming him. On June 16th, two preliminary battles unfolded. At Ligny, Napoleon decisively defeated the Prussians, forcing them to retreat. At Quatre, the French under Marshal Ney fought Wellington's forces to a bloody stalemate, preventing Ney from reinforcing Napoleon. Wellington, ever the pragmatist, chose his ground carefully. He picked a ridge near the village of Waterloo, a position that offered good defensive advantages, a reverse slope to shelter his troops, and strong points like Hougoumont and La Haye-Sainte to anchor his flanks. The morning of June 18th dawned, but heavy overnight rain had turned the battlefield into a quagmire. This delayed Napoleon's attack as he waited for the ground to dry, believing it was too soft for cavalry and artillery maneuvers. A critical miscalculation. Around 11:30 a.m., the battle began with Napoleon's diversionary attack on Hougoumont, a fortified chateau on Wellington's right flank. This fierce engagement would tie down thousands of French troops for the entire day, a costly distraction. The main French assault came in the early afternoon, with d'Erlon's massive infantry corps advancing against Wellington's centre-left. They marched in dense columns, a formation that offered great striking power but was vulnerable to artillery and musketry. As d'Erlon's columns crested the ridge, they were met by a devastating volley from Wellington's troops, who had been hidden on the reverse slope. The unexpected fire shattered the French formations, throwing them into disarray. Seizing the moment, Wellington unleashed his heavy cavalry, the Union and Household brigades. These elite horsemen charged down the slope, ripping through the disordered French infantry, turning their retreat into a rout. However, the British cavalry overextended their charge, galloping too far and becoming disorganized. They were then counterattacked by French lancers and cuirassiers, suffering heavy losses. A crucial moment where victory was almost seized, then slipped away. In the mid-afternoon, Marshal Ney, without Napoleon's direct order, launched a series of massive cavalry charges against Wellington's lines. Wave after wave of French horsemen thundered across the battlefield, a truly awe-inspiring sight. But Wellington's infantry formed squares, formidable defensive formations that presented a bristling wall of bayonets in every direction. The squares were impervious to cavalry, forcing the French horsemen to retreat again and again. While these charges were repelled, they achieved little directly. But they wore down the Allied defenders and kept them occupied, preventing Wellington from reinforcing other parts of his line, particularly the crucial farmhouse of La Haye-Sainte. Around 6 p.m., after hours of desperate fighting, the French finally captured La Haye-Sainte. This strategic farmhouse, at the center of Wellington's line, now provided a forward base for French skirmishers and artillery, threatening to break the Allied center. Just as the Allied line seemed on the verge of collapse, a new threat emerged for Napoleon. In the distance, Prussians under Blücher finally arrived on the battlefield, having regrouped after Ligny and marched relentlessly to join Wellington. Napoleon, realizing the gravity of the situation, committed his ultimate reserve, the Imperial Guard. These veterans, his most loyal and formidable troops, were tasked with breaking Wellington's centre before the full weight of the Prussians could be brought to bear. The Imperial Guard advanced in several columns, marching directly into the teeth of Wellington's exhausted but resolute infantry. The air was thick with musket smoke and the roar of cannons. As they approached, they were met by a ferocious volley from the British Guards, who, hidden on the reverse slope, rose and fired like a thunderclap. The elite French troops, for perhaps the first time, wavered under such unexpected fire. Wellington, seeing his moment, gave the order, "Up, Guards, and at them!" The British charged with bayonets, pushing back the stunned Imperial Guard. This was the turning point, a psychological blow that shattered the French morale. The cry, "La Garde recule!" "The Guard is retreating!" spread like wildfire through the French lines. It was unthinkable, unimaginable. Panic began to set in as Napoleon's most feared soldiers were seen to break and flee. With the Imperial Guard broken and the Prussians now attacking his right flank in full force, Napoleon's army began to disintegrate. The battlefield became a chaotic rout, with French soldiers fleeing in every direction. Napoleon, usually calm under fire, was visibly distraught. He reportedly muttered, "It is finished." His grand ambitions, his empire, all crumbling in the mud of Waterloo. He narrowly escaped capture, riding away as his army dissolved. Wellington and Blücher met near La Belle Alliance, shaking hands in a moment that symbolized the Allied victory. The Iron Duke had held his ground, and the Prussians had arrived just in time to seal Napoleon's fate. The battle was a bloodbath. Estimates vary, but tens of thousands of soldiers from all sides lay dead or wounded on the field. The human cost of this final imperial struggle was immense. 4 days later, on June 22nd, Napoleon abdicated for the second and final time. This time, there would be no triumphant return. He was exiled to the remote island of St. Helena in the Atlantic, far from any chance of escape. He would spend the remaining 6 years of his life there, dictating his memoirs, reflecting on his incredible rise and devastating fall. The little corporal who had once commanded an empire, now a prisoner of history. Waterloo marked the end of an era. The Napoleonic Wars, which had convulsed Europe for over 2 decades, were finally over. The continent entered a period of relative peace, albeit one dominated by conservative monarchies. The battle cemented Wellington's reputation as one of history's greatest defensive commanders. His steadfastness and mastery of terrain proved to be the perfect foil for Napoleon's aggressive genius. For Napoleon, Waterloo was the ultimate tragedy, a culmination of hubris and ill fortune. He had gambled everything on one last throw of the dice and lost. His legend, however, would only grow in defeat. The Battle of Waterloo remains a testament to the unpredictable nature of war, where grand strategies can be undone by mud, miscommunication, and the sheer tenacity of individual soldiers. It was a battle of giants, a clash of ideologies, and the final scene in the epic drama of Napoleon Bonaparte. The echoes of that fateful day in Belgium continue to resonate, shaping our understanding of leadership, resilience, and the cost of ambition.